Welcome to the Twisted Pint Tavern. Today we're visiting r/D&D to answer a very heavily debated question. D&D players of Reddit, should there be friendly fire on nat 1s? For context, this person's DM makes it so you hit an ally if you roll a 1, and they would just like to confirm if it's truly miserable or not. The general consensus is that it sucks. Mostly because it sucks. Some tables, especially with new DMs, still use it though. Confirmed, it's a terrible rule that punishes particularly martial classes. Basically, the more skilled and proficient fighters become, the more frequently they'll miss. 3 attacks per round, 5% chance to miss on each. It's a widely scorned rule. Just FYI, at my table, I play if you roll a 1, you describe what happens. It might or might not have a mechanical effect, like dropping your weapon, but it's the player's choice of how they want to roleplay it. I think that's a pretty good way to do it. The only time you should genuinely hit an ally is if an enemy is using them as cover and you hit that specific threshold. Nat 1 should not equal friendly fire. And then a reply to this one, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. If your rogue ignites a flask of oil where your bard is standing, yeah, that's gonna deal friendly fire damage. What did you think would happen? But doing normal things like swinging your sword at an enemy shouldn't occasionally fuck you over. I actually fully agree with this here, and I do the whole if someone has cover because of a creature in between you and them, then you could hit that creature in between with a nat 1, but only on a nat 1 and only if it's because that person has cover via a creature. It's a horrible rule that disproportionately hurts some classes and builds more than others and really throws off balancing issues. You seem to be experiencing some of those downsides. As a DM, one thing I like to do is just add fluff like this. For example, if a caster rolls a natural 1 that misses, I'll say something like, and the rogue feels it fly a little too close to her head, or something like that. Everyone seems to have a good time with it. I couldn't imagine actually implementing a mechanical punishment for it. Yeah, you can have near misses from nat 1s, that's totally fine. Even like an archer's arrow grazing off of the shoulder piece of someone's armor. Like that implies a very near miss, but it still doesn't do anything. Had this in a game I was in once, and it was awful. Other players shouldn't be punished for my awful rolls, lol. Yeah, awful rolls, I feel that. My DM makes it so when you roll a nat 1, you hit yourself for 1 damage. It's actually hilarious when an enemy or yourself goes down by their own doing. See, and if the table's okay with it, that's fine. I'll get to my thoughts a little more on this later, but yeah, when an enemy hurts themselves, like that's great, that's hilarious. Going against the grain here, I don't think this is a terrible house rule at all. There's a reason why law enforcement officers don't shoot at criminals into crowds, for example. I don't use anything like that when we play, but depending on the tone of the campaign, I could try to include the option of friendly fire. But there are a few important things here. This is a house rule and it should be discussed before the campaign starts. Pulling this out of nowhere after someone decided to play an archer is terrible. If I, as a DM, went with a house rule like this, I'd also include an extra clause stating that any effects that ignore cover, like sharpshooter or spell sniper, also ignores the risk of friendly fire. Love that, absolutely love that. If the rule is being used against players, it has to be used in their favor too. An opponent should start hitting each other on their 1s. I think that's a good take. As a DM, I've played the nat 1 hits your pal rule before, but only if the ally is in a vulnerable place. For example, once it was an Eldritch Blast that was purposefully shot over the shoulder of an ally and was a nat 1. That said, I also gave the ally the chance for a dex save, and even if that fails, the result is never damage other than maybe a point. It's mostly just a flavor moment of clipping the ally, causing a bit of chaos, and giving the players the chance to roleplay in battle. My current players enjoy it, but it's not for every group, and it definitely shouldn't be the standard result. This should be a discussion in session 0. I used to use it with AD&D and we loved it, but generally with 5e and its action economy, we agree that it slows it down too much and happens too often. Again, my takes at the end, but yes. I view it as being possible because while you're being a 20th level fighter and you could stop on a dime mid-swing, that doesn't mean the person won't reflexively accidentally move into a hit. So the criteria for hurting allies is you must be in a proximity and or path of being hit, and it has to make sense to get hit. The attacker must make a second roll to see if it hits the other person's armor class. If the other person has an action, they can make an opposed roll to avoid and block or otherwise deal with said attack. If a nat 1 is rolled and it makes sense, the attacker upon rolling again and hitting their AC hits themselves. While in my campaign, 2 nat 20s in a row will instantly kill something, and 3 nat 20s in a row will kill multiple things. 2 nat 1s will kill the attacker, and 3 nat 1s will kill the attacker and closest multiple things. That's a little punishing in my opinion. Back in the 3.5 days, we had a failed chart and crit chart. If you rolled a 1, you rolled on the failed chart. Another roll of a 1 and you maimed your character, but a 20 just meant a quick stumble and not much happened because you balanced the situation. A 5 was something like drop your weapon and it stabs you in the toe. For the crit chart, rolling 20 on it meant a beheading of lesser enemies. Bosses were immune to this until like 5 HP, I think. It's been so long, I forget how we did that. I'm personally quite fond of this rule actually, it's hilarious. Had a party member roll 2 nat 1s in a row once. He was close to my paladin and the second nat 1 had to roll to hit her. He rolled a nat 20 to hit and I dropped the 2 HP. Still the funniest nat 1/nat 20 story to this date for me. I love the nat 1 friendly fire rule for the sheer chaos it can bring, and I live for it at my table. Sometimes we do this when our combat isn't super tense to add a little comedic effect at our table. To enforce this as a standard ruling seems outrageous to me, especially if there's something at stake. I prefer funny nat 1s. Ranger got a 1 first combat of the campaign, was a little nervous, accidentally dumped his quiver on the ground. I don't track ammo, so that wasn't like a real punishment. Caster might have left the safety on, their firebolt fizzles. Well, alright then, we already know this is a touchy subject, but it seems to me that most people are against friendly fire on nat 1s or nat 1 penalties in general. I personally don't mind some light tweaks on a nat 1, but that's mainly because older editions like AD&D allowed for systems like that without being as punishing to the players or certain classes. In 5th edition though, I feel like it's just too punishing to classes like fighters who get a ton of attacks, or in fights where the players are rolling disadvantage, and thus it's more likely to happen and you would hurt your allies. But if you're not hurting your allies, then it's probably okay. Anyway, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you leave a like and subscribe to become a Tavern regular. What are your thoughts on punishing nat 1s? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again, and I'll see all you adventurers in the next video.